Welcome to your first video on Unit 5. This is topics 5.3 and 5.4. It's the Green Revolution and impacts of agricultural practices. And we're going to be covering pages 341 through 344 and 348 through 352 of your textbook. As we're starting to move towards more human-centric topics, please realize that a lot of what you're going to need to know is not just simple facts. The facts themselves are going to make the questions possible. You're going to have to analyze pros and cons of everything from both a anthropogenic lens, which is usually an economic or how does it benefit humans, and from an ecological or an environmental lens, which is how does it benefit or harm the environment outside of humans. Also realize that the readings are only giving you part of the picture. The rest of the picture of what you need to know is going to be covered in class. So the two are definitely going to work in concert with each other to prepare you for both your unit test and for the national exam. Okay. The first part of it, you're going to notice a lot of your questions are be able to differentiate or take notice of or stuff like that. When you're going through these, that basically means odds are you are not going to be asked specific multiple choice questions about these things. They're just giving you the vocabulary that you need to be able to make it through the questions you will be presented with. So this first one says be able to differentiate between the types of food production systems if you see them embedded in a question. Croplands, rangelands, pastures, feedlots, fisheries, and aquaculture. Croplands are exactly what they sound like. You farm plants there. Rangelands and pastures and feedlots go together. Rangelands are open spaces where you allow animals to roam free to eat. And animals that we usually on 4 legs or 2 are called livestock. Pastures are enclosed grassy areas, and then feedlots are places where you have the animals in high concentration, and then you feed them, instead of grass, you feed them things like grain. And then fisheries are natural areas where you find schools of fish to catch out in the wild, and then aquaculture are actual enclosures, whether in the ocean or on land, that are used to raise fish. Fish are things with tails, and then shellfish are things like everything from oysters to mussels, scallops. I'll have to show you guys pictures of that stuff. All right. What 3 grains are most often farmed? Rice, wheat, and corn. This isn't all of the starches that are available to people. I mean, we also use potatoes, but grain, let me back up here. Grain is the seed of this particular plant. You have to realize these are all grasses. So the grass that you see growing outside of the school, imagine that stuff really tall, and then you harvest the seeds, and that is what the grain is. And again, there are a lot of people who survive just on this because they can't afford meat. There are lots and lots of places where people eat little to no protein. We will be discussing in this class what some of the consequences are of that kind of diet. Do most of the world's people eat meat? No. Why is this so? They flat out can't afford it. Because think about what's invested in livestock. Here, when you have a grain, you raise the grain and you eat it. For livestock, a lot of times you have to raise the grain to give to the animals, and then you eat them. And if you remember the 10% rule, only 10% of what you farm actually is stored within the animal for you to eat. So it's a huge, huge waste of resources, really, in terms of getting the when you're talking about just calories for survival, meat is not a really efficient way of getting those calories. How do edible species of organisms compare to the number of species cultivated via agriculture? This is hopefully something we'll have time for. There are 11 bajillion, and I'm rounding up, types of organisms on our planet, and we eat next to none of them. And it's largely because of the idea of domestication, and I will be discussing this idea in class. But food specialization, let me find specifically where this is. All right. Yeah. Where is it specifically quoted in here? Let's see. Oh, all right, so I guess we haven't gotten specific to it yet. Sorry about that. Only a few species of mammals and fish provide most of the world's meat and seafood. The same thing when you're talking about crops. Why is that a problem? Because if a disease comes out and takes out these crops, then we kind of have no food to eat. We saw this actually in Ireland during the potato famine. That is something that we will discuss in class, and the consequences. I mean, that's literally why the Irish left to come to America, is they had no food to eat, period. They were only cultivating a few types of potatoes. A fungus came through and wiped them out, and so they were starving, so they had to leave. They couldn't grow anything else there. All right, so the Green Revolution does not refer to environmentally friendly farming practices. Instead, it refers to the industrialization of agriculture in an effort to increase overall food production. What three major technological advances have made the Green Revolution possible? Right there, irrigation. The word irrigation is supplying water to crops by artificial means. Synthetic fertilizer, you're already familiar with this from the nitrogen cycle. Remember the Haber-Bosch process that takes nitrogen out of the air and puts it into a form that plants can use out, and it does so outside of a process that we normally see, which is bacteria facilitating that. And then synthetic pesticides, keeping things that we don't want to eat our crops from eating our crops. That is a topic we're going to talk about in another section. All right, define monoculture and crop. All right, so yeah, monoculture. This is a really, really important topic for you to think about. Mono means one, culture is the thing that you're growing. You know, when you see a field of corn, it's just corn. When you see a field of wheat, it's just wheat. That is a monoculture. Now, for the farmer, that makes it ridiculously easy to grow and harvest because everything is growing at the same time, at the same pace, and is all harvested at once. The problem is, from a biodiversity standpoint, you've got two issues. First of all, it's just one crop. So again, if something comes through, a disease or let's say a pest, everything can be wiped out. And then think about it from a biodiversity perspective. You don't have a lot of opportunities for pre-adaptation to allow you to combat as yet unforeseen changes in your environment. Plus, what's going to live in a field of corn? Not much. So you're talking about a biodiversity, almost a desert, essentially. And then crops are basically things that you grow for eating and for selling. All right, so let's see what else. Differentiate between all the different types of agriculture here. Industrialized, plantation, traditional subsistence, and traditional intensive. All right, industrialized is exactly what it sounds like. You own thousands of acres, one company does, usually not an individual, and you farm the heck out of it using every single trick in your book to maximize how much food that you can get out of it. And because you're dealing with such a large-scale endeavor, they're usually pretty successful. And you can see more developed countries, that is predominantly what we have, and they produce a lot of the world's food. Now, from an economic perspective, that does mean that a lot of times individual farmers are kind of shut out of farming in general because those large industrialized systems are a lot better at doing what they do. Plantation agriculture you usually see in places in less developed countries. This is where you grow what are called cash crops. That means stuff that you can sell for a pretty big profit, not a lot of effort. Please make note of some of the examples: bananas, coffee, vegetables, soybeans, sugarcane, palm oil. We will discuss the implications of palm oil a little bit later on. The benefits are that because they're shipped to more developed countries that will pay the price for them, those farmers can make a lot of money. The downside is this country is not growing crops for its own people, and they can't afford these things either. So unless you own the farm, you don't make a lot of money. The workers on the farm don't make very much. So again, pros and cons with everything. Plus, again, you're dealing with usually a monoculture. So you're usually cutting down a biodiverse forest to grow your crops, and yeah, not so good. And we will talk about the not so good stuff in detail as we move through this unit. All right, traditional subsistence is basically one family grows what they eat. This is what you see in most of the less developed places in the world where people can actually own land. Intensive means that you grow what you can produce for your family and then have some left over to sell. This is how the individual farmer here in the United States kind of got their start. And this is, you see a lot of people at the farmer's market do this. They have chickens lay eggs and they keep their own that they need, and then they sell the rest of the farmer's market, vegetable gardens, that kind of thing. So there are even people in developed countries who fall into this category. All right, polyculture. This is something we'll discuss a little bit more in class, and benefits and drawbacks to this. This is where you grow different things at the same time in one plot. So you'll have like a different rows of different things, and I'll show you some examples in class. You can see all the benefits here. Roots grow at different depths, so you're using water more efficiently. Weeds can't compete, especially if you're growing, let's say, corn, and then you're also growing a bean, which is a vine that grows on the ground and kind of acts as a natural weed deterrent, and then also as a mulch to keep the water in. Of course, the downside to this is everything is ready at a different time. So harvesting can be labor intensive. Instead of cutting everything down and harvesting it all at the same time, you got to get in there with your hands. And anything you have to do with your hands is labor intensive and can be costly if you're actually paying your workers. Also, when you cut down on weeds and you have different things maturing at different times, it also means you can cut down on your pesticide use. And herbicides fall under that. This isn't in there, but it'll be covered later. If you grow a plant that naturally repels pests, then that is super helpful as well. And remember, you grow something like a legume that shelters nitrogen-fixing bacteria in its roots. You're actually having a system that creates its own fertilizer. All right, so let's see what else we've got. What is slash and burn agriculture? This specifically takes place in tropical forests, and this is kind of a cycle of poverty thing. You need land to grow food for your family, so you cut down part of the forest. And the way that you do that is you cut down the trees, you burn the trees. That enriches the naturally low in nutrient, high acidity soil that you have. Burnt ash is naturally basic, so you kind of start out with a neutral pH and a lot of good nutrients in there. Problem is, remember, the soil is not great. So although you've enriched it a little bit, that enrichment only lasts a couple of years. With poor farming techniques, and we'll talk about what good farming techniques are later. Anyway, these poor farming techniques, you strip all the nutrients out of the soil, whether you've poor watering or poor any number of things. So now your land is sterile. You still have to feed your family, so then you go and repeat the process again and again and again. You can, obviously, this is one of the things that's led to the cutting down of the tropical rainforest. There are other things as well, but that's one of the problems. Is this a choice for them? No. That's basically the only choice that they have at present. Okay, what is organic? You've got to be really careful with this word because only parts of it are legislated. So if you read through this part, you're going to see what organic is. Please realize synthetic isn't bad and natural isn't good. Rattlesnake venom, natural, not great for you. Botulinum toxin, used in small amounts, it can help with your wrinkles. Used in large amounts, it will kill you instantly. Natural, not good for you. So please do not confuse synthetic with bad and natural with good. Just because synthetic pesticides are not used does not mean that pesticides are not used. And this is when we get towards the end of the year and start talking about sustainability, and we'll talk about what things may be good to grow, to purchase that are organic, and which things are just, to me, a waste of your money. But definitely make a note that there are different levels of organic, especially when you go shopping and try and determine whether or not you should spend the extra money for organic. Take note of this list of things to know. And natural is a meaningless term. guess what, guys? Everything around you is nature. The word natural means nothing. Also, does not use chemicals, really. The only thing that doesn't have chemicals in it is a vacuum. Um, uh, Everything is a chemical. Everything with its technical name sounds scary. Please make sure when you're purchasing food, you're making choices not based on fear, but on facts. That's all I'm asking you guys to do. Okay, so moving back to the questions. What are the 3 steps involved in the process called Green Revolution? Side note, if I keep like mentioning topics and then not wrapping it up, that's what class is for. This is all background information. So for the Green Revolution, develop and plant monocultures of a lot of times genetically engineered things. We're going to talk about what that is and whether or not it's good. Use a lot of water and fertilizer and pesticide to make sure you max out how much you can grow in a particular place. Increase the number of crops grown per year on a plot of land. And those are the 3 things. So everybody's inclined to make this sound bad, but remember, we have people starving to death. So if you can max out the amount of food that you're growing in a particular area, starvation's not great, and avoiding starvation, good. However, there are parts of this process that currently are not beneficial to the environment. So, yeah. This is something that we will be revisiting multiple times. Compare the percentage of disposable income used for food in the U.S. versus less developed countries. This, always a shock. Right. Let's see where it is. 344. Yes. Americans spend the lowest percentage of disposable income in the world, an average of 10% on food. Low-income families in less developed countries can spend up to 70% of their income on food. This doesn't, obviously, how much is left over for things like rent, electricity, if electricity is even available. There are places where you don't even get water for pennies to the gallon like we do here in the United States, where you have to pay a lot for water. So lots of, imagine where healthcare and schooling and all of that fits into this, because remember, lots of other countries, school is also something you have to pay for. Now, believe me, I know from experience that only spending 9 or 10% of your family's income on food is not accurate, especially for a lot of pockets of our population. Here in the United States, although a lot of people do experience food insecurity, that there are still days where people go hungry, we, for the most part, do not have people starving to death. It's very real that there are places in other countries where people just flat out don't have access to food, period. No food banks, nada, nothing. That is not to say that food insecurity here in the United States isn't also a huge problem. But things in other countries are also truly dire. This is not meant to make anybody feel bad about their situation. What it is meant for you to do is to understand that solutions that work here in places like the United States may not work in other places simply because of a lack of infrastructure, a lack of access, a lack of funding. So when I share these things with you, it is not intended to be just, well, it could be worse. It is more so that when you answer questions on the national exam, that you are providing reasonable solutions for problems based on where they are occurring. All right. What are some hidden costs inherent in agriculture in the U.S. and what are farm subsidies? That is, all right. I don't know why I felt the need to mix those up. Sorry about that. Farm subsidies. Please realize that there are a lot of things that go on in the United States, especially, that the cost of the thing is not the cost of the thing. Gasoline, a lot of the minerals that we use in our computer, in our computers and other technology, and then food. The cost that you pay for these things does not reflect the true cost because of things like subsidies. There are farmers who are paid so that they stay in business. Great for the farmers, but also realize that means that there are a lot of what are called external costs that you're not aware of, that get paid in other places down the line. And that is a concept of hidden costs to things that we will be discussing throughout the rest of the school year. Okay, so that's the end of the Green Revolution. Oh boy, sorry, we're at the 20-minute mark. Let's go ahead and go real quick through impacts of agricultural practices, starting on page 348. We are going to hit the same things over and over and over again. Whenever a human does anything, you are always going to have biodiversity loss, period. Know what the specifics are that have to do with farming, but again, monocultures, not super helpful with biodiversity. Whenever you farm and you water and you leave no roots in the ground, you're going to have soil erosion, which can lead to a loss of fertility. We are going to talk about these next three things here. Water. Agriculture is a water-intensive thing. You take water from one place, it's not available in another. You have runoff, and anything that gets caught up in the runoff ends up somewhere else. These are algal blooms. Remember, that comes from excess nutrients, and fertilizers are a great place for that, for those excess nutrients to be a source. And then if you use pesticides in one place, it rains and they run somewhere else. As long as you can remember that the earth is connected, all the systems are connected, these should not be difficult for you to remember. Air pollution is going to be a little tough for you to keep in your brain right now because we have not addressed this yet in this class. Just recognize that greenhouse gases are part of the thing that keep the earth warm, and that farming does enhance these, even if it's just flat out from the use of agricultural implements, sorry, brain not working, tractors and harvesters and combine machine, all of that stuff. And then human health. We're going to address these in a separate section. Just be aware that there are impacts on human health. But you're going to hear me say the same things over and over and over again. Biodiversity loss, soil erosion, overuse of water or fouling the water. You don't want to use the word dirty. Dirt is fine. But things in the water that don't belong there, and then their impacts on things, and then air pollution. We're going to say these things over and over and over again. Now, it's not enough to regurgitate this stuff. You have to explain how it happens. For example, when you till a plot of land and you don't plant things right away, you have this bare soil that's right there. And wind and water can cause it to blow or wash away, where it goes into streams and rivers, where the water becomes darker and it absorbs more heat, and hot water doesn't hold as much oxygen as cold water, and so therefore the fish in there die. Meanwhile, back on now the topsoilless land, you can't grow plants there, and now more stuff blows away, and now you have subsoil, and now you have a desert, where you can't grow anything and nothing grows. So be able to explain those things. Lots of fertile soil here for free response questions. We've already talked about the layers of soil to death, so you should be good there. All right, different types of water. You have sheet erosion, which is exactly what it sounds like. It just moves in a sheet, removes thin layers. Once you start getting things that run in tiny streams, so the first tiny stream is rill, this is when it becomes problematic. And then rills kind of meet together, and then you form a gully, which is like a big ditch. So basically, the worst of the three is going to be gully erosion for sure. How does agriculture contribute to soil erosion? I think I just ranted on that away. What are the effects of soil erosion? I've already talked about that as well. But if you need specifics, right here, notice that it even contributes to climate change in a couple of ways. First one is that it releases carbon stored in the soil, and then just dark earth is more absorbent of heat than plants are. Plants are shady, and so then you're heating up. The earth is absorbing heat, which if you have any ice nearby can end up melting that. So yeah, problematic. Let's see. And they can re-radiate it at night, but again, that's something we'll talk about a little bit later. I think I've already talked about soil pollution. Well, actually, no, this is something else. This is where anything you do in the air is going to end up in the soil, period. Anything you do in the water is going to end up in the soil, period. So make sure you read that. What is desertification? It is not the making of tasty meal-ending treats. It is creating a desert through the process that I explained already. The Dust Bowl happened in the early 1930s, and this is why we went into the Great Depression. It's basically a two-pronged affair. The first one is all the speculation in the stock market. You had the crash. That crash would not have been as bad had we also not been mismanaging our soil for so long, and now all of a sudden we couldn't grow anything anymore. The reason that it was called the Dust Bowl is that literally you'd have these winds sweep through, making the sky black in the middle of the day because of all of the dust. It got into your clothes, into your food, into your teeth. Your car wouldn't work anymore because your engine was full of particles. Breathe it in. If you had asthma or emphysema, it made it worse. So yeah, not good times. We are already seeing examples of this again. I will share that with you in class. How did the Dust Bowl form in the U.S. in the 30s? Flat out poor soil management. Just, leaving the earth bare for too long, overwatering, growing the same crops over and over and over again so it couldn't support any crops at all. Just bad soil practices, just bad. Where is desertification currently an issue? Definitely Africa and China, but also quite frankly here in the United States. And it's not a testable thing because it's not in your book, but we still see it in as an example, Arizona, and currently in Australia. What two issues can result from overwatering? You've got waterlogging and you have salinization. Okay, soil salinization. So most irrigation water has salts in it, all right? That they just do. You can't taste them, but they're very low concentration. However, you get rid of the water and then it's 100% salt. So if you, in dry areas where the water evaporates very quickly, overwater, and you eventually get a crust of, it's not frosting, that is salt. A crust of salt on the top of your soil, plants don't grow. Useless information for you. That's what the ancient Romans used to do when they conquered a land, is they would go into the agricultural fields and instead of planting seeds, to plant, by the way, is to sow, S-O-W, they would sow salt into the furrows that they dug, which are like little lines in the dirt. And so then they would work in salt into the soil so that their conquered people could not grow any food, meaning they had to rely upon the Romans for their food as well. However, this is obviously not on purpose. Most plants are not built to grow in salt. And so it will, you stunt your crop growth, you lower your yields, and then eventually you can't grow anything anymore. How do you fix this? The word is to remediate. Honestly, you have to just take all the topsoil, rinse it out, and then put it back, or put in just new topsoil altogether. Prevention is always less expensive than remediation, period. The problem is that a lot of time prevention requires money now that people don't have, and so they will put off doing good practices until quote unquote later, because they feel like maybe they don't have to pay for it later. And that is a problem we'll run across again and again. Another problem with irrigation is waterlogging. This is where you basically use so much water in an effort to reduce salinization. You end up having that zone of leaching, all of your nutrients go in, and then also, quite frankly, roots need little air pockets in order to do their thing. No air pockets, the roots die, the plant dies. Problem. And okay, so let's go ahead and get through the last bit of this. How does soil erosion impact aquatic ecosystems? Like I said before, dirt runs into the water. right here. Can end up smothering fish and shellfish, clogs their gills. Again, darker water becomes warmer water, which can either lead to heat shock or just lower dissolved oxygen levels. Warmer water, less dissolved oxygen. Plus, soil contains nutrients, and that is where you have, again, algae goes nuts, algae dies, the bacteria that eats the dead stuff goes crazy, uses all the oxygen in the water, and then fish die because it creates that hypoxic zone. Agriculture activities, I've already talked about how that influences. I've already talked about how does over-fertilizing impact aquatic ecosystems. How does agriculture contribute to air pollution? Straight up fossil fuel use. How does food production reduce biodiversity? I have also talked about that. Monocultures destroy natural ecosystems, and then there's nothing, you grow one kind of thing, you can't support a diverse organisms living there, and quite frankly, farmers don't want anything growing there except for their crop. And, especially where you're cutting down forests to grow these monocultures, not good. All right, so let's see. So please make sure that you read all of this. So what are some problems? Well, this is where we have seed banks, which are places climate controlled, usually cold places where seeds are kept in stasis in the event that we have some sort of blight, which is the name of a disease particular to plants. It's many diseases, but it usually has to do with plant, takes out the crops that we're growing right now. There has been a resurgence in what are called heirloom varieties, meaning, there are hundreds of varieties of tomatoes. My God, look it up. It's amazing. You've got purple ones, you've got candy stripe ones, you've got little guys, you've got big guys, all different flavors. And that's just tomatoes. And so those varieties are kept here, but the nice part is people are starting to grow those, which again reduces the possibility that you can get taken out by a disease, and increases the pre-adaptations that make future problems survivable. I also encourage you to look up corn grown in Mexico. There are dozens of varieties you have never seen before that are gorgeous, and I'm assuming wonderful to eat as well. So yeah, but I could go on and on about this stuff on video when I am happy to go on and on with you in person in class. So that is the end of your Quiz 1 material.